My name is Debbie Palmer. I work as a guardian through Guardianship Support Agency, a small nonprofit. The Orphans Court of Lehigh County appoints the agency as guardian, and then I work for the agency. There are two types of guardians: guardian of person, who makes daily life and medical decisions, and the guardian of estate, who makes financial and property decisions for adults who may have intellectual disabilities, dementia, a head injury, or mental illness that interferes with the person's ability to receive information, process it, and communicate a decision. Now, if you've seen the movie I Care a Lot, which has the log line, "A court-appointed legal guardian defrauds her older clients and traps them under her care," or if you follow Britney Spears' conservatorship, another word for guardianship, you may wonder how a Christian can be a guardian. Let me assure you that not all guardians take advantage of their people, but it is true that guardians have power over their wards. So I try to remember that God limited God's power for the love of us, as we see in the Noah story and in the gift of Jesus Christ, where God became human for us. So I attempt to follow God's good example and encourage my folks to speak for themselves, providing choices and choosing the least restrictive living arrangement. I'm always mindful of this power. I don't think I would have found the joy and pleasure in my work if I'd done it in my 30s. First Presbyterian Church prepared me by lifting up God's love for those the world calls the least of these. When I was younger, I would have thought that the least of these are people I should help. But I was ready when I was older to discover that the least of these are beautiful human beings in whom I can take delight, as I'm certain God takes delight. So I have a few brief stories to share with you. Mr. CJ walked everywhere, loved the out of doors, regularly laid in the sun in the city parks. He entertained me with stories of going AWOL in France during World War II. I suspect his officers weren't as amused as I was. He had this contentment and a fullness of life I found enviable, although he had almost no personal belongings. Through Mrs. A, God reminded me about self-giving love. I had bought her some shoes, went back to the store for a larger size, then decided that the first pair really fit her better. It was the end of the day, I was really tired, and I just wanted to leave that pair of shoes there and go home. But I had a nudge, so I took the shoes back and retrieved the original pair. Now, Mrs. A had severe dementia, and she had never said a logical or rational thing to me in the time that I had known her. So I was tying her original new pair of shoes on her foot, and she takes my face in her hands and says to me as clear as day, "I love you." For several years, I invited this one young man with intellectual disabilities to my house for dinner with the same group of people. He had a trust that afforded him to travel and to go to concerts. He talked nonstop about all the fun he had, which the other folks couldn't afford. In frustration, I finally stopped the dinners. But later, I really regretted it. I remembered that Jesus died for us while we were yet sinners. I wished I'd hung in there with him. Grace works. One of my younger ladies who had mental illness ended up in the Transitional Living Center, a Lehigh Valley mental health residential program, which had a gracious and caring staff. Her county case manager was also extremely gracious. Ms. D was an avid learner. She worked the program and bloomed with the gift of grace and is now out of guardianship. Lastly, I learned forgiveness. sorry. One of my lady's granddaughters was angry about her grandmother having a guardian. She had dressed me down several times. Now, her grandmother had several body systems which were in decline, and the doctor and I had decided that it was a good time for hospice. While the granddaughter was speaking to the doctor, I forced myself to go over and tell her about the decision I had made, expecting that she was going to be very angry at me. Before I said a word, she turned to me and said, "I am so sorry for the way I've treated you." I was totally flabbergasted. As a guardian, I enter into the life of people who never invited me to come in. They often have medical problems. I'm so sorry. Few family members who visit or much to enrich their life. Through all of this, we learn to be honest with each other. I learned to ride the waves of their emotions, not taking their anger too much to heart. Through the good and the bad, we usually grow pretty close. It's an amazing gift from God.